A-T. It's in the name.
Welcome into the good old-fashioned Dislike Podcast, your national championship preview. And we know everyone has been waiting for the Ben and Travis picks, the Will, the Blake picks, so that they can go out and hopefully not bet on the game according to our picks, because we have no idea what we're talking about. But that's why we brought on Richard Holdridge, the host of the Sports Beat. How you doing, Richard? It's been over a year. We got a little, hey there, how are you?
Yeah, it's been a year, gentlemen. I'm so glad. Of course, I'm on 9 o'clock Eastern time. Kids are getting ready to go to bed. I tell you, it's been crazy here at the Holdridge household, and I'm really looking forward to just being on the show with you guys and making this pick. You know, we're truly blessed once again. Georgia packing the national championship, going up against TCU, a Cinderella story. I actually like the storyline, TCU being the first non-traditional college football powerhouse playing for a national championship since, would you guys say, Virginia Tech in 1999? Because TCU is not your typical college football power.
It has been the Blue Bloods kind of dominating everything. You've had a few maybe get in. You know, Alabama played Cincinnati last year, but kind of just loaded up the box and ran it down their throat like most people probably thought they would. But, yeah, I'm thinking Virginia Tech. I can't believe 1999 has been that long ago. But
wow.
we were all at Freed Hardeman in 1999.
I was trying to think back to then, and I was a crisp 6 years old.
I was about to say I was 9, so elementary school was.
I had already graduated. I was in '99. I was at Freed. You're right. So
yeah, Ben, you, me, and Travis and Brad Page, we were all just rocking it at Freed Hardeman in 1999.
Yeah, tearing it up.
Yeah. Tearing it up, man! I can't believe it's been that long.
Actually, if we waited a couple of more hours, it would be, you know, the late night with up all night show with Richard Holdridge.
All night show, absolutely.
We'd be rocking and rolling.
I actually think in 1999, Stetson Bennett was a sophomore at the University.
Throwing it in there early.
The jab. As I mentioned, the panel of Dislike is with us. We've got Will Mahan, Ben Hayes, and our resident Barner, who hates not only Alabama but Georgia as well. Blake, how are you, man?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm already coming off the top rope here, just trying to keep some Alabama fans and the lone Georgia fan, trying to temper expectations. I know it's been quite a while since or last year it had been quite a while since Georgia had done much on the national scale, but they broke through and they're back in it again. And I'm surrounded by Alabama fans on a daily basis, so I'm just glad that they're not in it. So
Thank you.
We take that. We are somewhat sad about that, although the old man in me kind of like sitting back and decimating the team that beat TCU and going, we should have been in. You know, we have this argument, but we don't have all the worry. You know, we're not going to be wringing our hands on Monday night. And it's really difficult for me because I grew up kind of a fan of Georgia, red and black. They're in the East. They're probably my East team. They didn't like Auburn, which was enough reason for me to like them. But I think that I will be kind of, Richard, getting to be the, as you mentioned, the Cinderella story. You know, usually as an Alabama fan, I'm kind of waiting to crush the Cinderella story. That's what I want to do. But in this situation, I kind of get to sit back and go, you know, maybe I'll pull for TCU. Maybe the old Purple Frogs might pull it off, the Hypnotoad. But either way, it's not going to be a whole lot of issue. I look at it from this standpoint as well. Georgia and Alabama in the recruiting world is just going head to head. And so if they don't have a success, that kind of helps us out in recruiting, I think. You know, probably not much. What do you think about both of those? I know you mentioned the Cinderella story. What do you think about that recruiting and all that stuff?
Well, as we just saw National Signing Day, Alabama did get the number 1 recruiting class, which means they're not going anywhere. In fact, I think Alabama should be one of the favorites to win the national championship in 2023 because Alabama does not go 3 years without winning the national championship. As far as Kirby Smart at Georgia, the number 2 ranked recruiting class. My big worry for 2023 is Stetson Bennett is finally going to graduate. What are we going to do? Who's going to take over the Georgia quarterback? Oh, yeah, exactly. He's what, the ninth year senior? I mean, he's the same age as Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I mean, think about that. Lamar Jackson won the Heisman Trophy in 2016, and he's the same age as Stetson Bennett.
So, trivia question here. Who was at a college longer, Hunter Renfrow or Stetson Bennett?
That is very good. Yeah.
I think they both just got their AARP cards in the mail. So.
But did Hunter Renfrow get like a year of exemption because of COVID? I think he left after.
No,
he was there all natural for 8 years or whatever.
Wow.
He felt like he was never going to leave. And that was
Alabama. Go ahead.
No, I seriously thought he had like maybe a younger brother there. That's why we saw that Renfrow name at Clemson for so long.
No,
same guy.
No. They both of them will live in Alabama nightmares. As I mentioned last year, I keep waiting for that Stetson Bennett kind of mess up game. And I guess to some degree, looking at Kirby's after post game comments, you might have thought maybe he didn't play that well. But if you look at the stats, I mean, I know he turned it on late. If that's a bad game, sign me up for that on Monday night if I'm a Georgia fan, because you can play with that.
Well, the one thing I'm concerned about is Georgia's defense. As Ohio State torched that secondary, I think that the key was kind of like last year in the national championship with Georgia and Alabama. Once Marvin Harrison Jr. left that game, it was a different ball game. Georgia got the necessary holding Ohio State to a field goal to make it a 14-point game. And really, you're Ohio State secondary. You cannot give up the big play with like taking 2 seconds off the clock. There's 8 minutes left to go. And Georgia's down by 3 after they convert the 2-point conversion. And Ohio State had a chance to win it. But how fitting was it that they missed that field goal attempt at the stroke of midnight? Was any of you even watching the ball drop? I was actually watching the game on my phone, and I wasn't even aware it was 2023 already.
I watched the Ohio State kicker drop the ball is what I did. I don't know if Blake was in on that group text, but when they showed that kicker take his helmet off and they showed his face as Kirby called that timeout, I texted the guys and said, there's no way he's making this field goal. He looked terrified, and I'm not judging him because I would have been terrified too. But, man, you could tell it was getting to him. It was a perfectly – and speak to Kirby's, 2 timeouts that he called that were just perfect timeouts.
Timeouts of the century. That first timeout when Ohio State tried to do the fake punt, he knew the formation. He called the timeout. Great getting that done. And then the timeout to ice the Ohio State kicker. A 50-yard field goal, we think that a college kicker should be able to make it. Not under that pressure. Hats off to the Georgia defense for stuffing the run to make it 2nd down 11. The incomplete pass, putting pressure on C.J. Stroud to throw it out of bounds. And there was really nowhere to go. I actually thought once C.J. Stroud got into field goal range right around the 30, I was getting nervous as a Georgia fan. I was thinking Ohio State's going to win this game. And it was a valiant effort, but, Georgia's going to come up short. But Georgia wins the football game. I'm shocked. They did not play all that great. In fact, they played terrible, and yet they beat Ohio State. And now they're a 13-point favorite against TCU. I'm not as nervous for the national championship, but Max Duggan can make plays. And they have TCU's got the best wide receiver in the country. Quentin Johnson is projected to be a top 10 pick in the 2023 NFL draft. So this is starting to make me nervous. I think the TCU is going to be able to move the ball in Georgia's defense.
I think there's going to be some haymakers. I think this is one of those deals where it's a rock fight, and Georgia's pretty well known for doing a rock fight. I will say that if TCU turns it over as much as they turned it over against Michigan, it will not be close. Like, TCU needs to play well. This is not the dominant Georgia team of last year. If it was last year, I'd be like, they're about to destroy TCU's life and they may never recover. But as you mentioned, they can make hay on that secondary. And for the first time, it seems like all year, Georgia will play a true game away from Georgia, the state of Georgia, which, hey, the chips fell where they were. Alabama didn't take care of business. If we'd have gotten the playoffs, it might have been a little different. I think Georgia still wins that matchup. but it's probably a little bit. It's not 13-point favorite, I wouldn't think. And so Georgia's playing the hands that dealt them, so you can't blame them for that. And so it will be interesting to see how flying across the country to play in Los Angeles will affect both these teams. Blake, what do you think, man? Give us your non-Alabama, non-Georgia take on TCU, Georgia.
Well, I agree with what Richard said. Is Max Duggan? He's a baller. You know, he has the experience. He hasn't necessarily been on this stage before, but I've been watching him from afar in the Big 12, and he can score. He can lead. He has total command of that offense. And Sonny Dykes is a phenomenal play caller and leader of this Cinderella team. You know, oftentimes we see these Cinderella teams of these really young coaches, or they're the first time being there. Sonny Dykes has been around the block. He's coached at several places and had a lot of success on offense. Also, a big thing that TCU is going to have to do to keep this game close is they're going to have to run the ball. I know it's going to be really tough because Georgia is tough yet again up front on defense this year. But Kendre Miller, the running back that went out with the knee last week, he's questionable for this game, and he is a bruiser. They're going to have to rely on him to carry part of the load because he had over 1,500 yards this year. And with a knee coming into this game, I don't know how much he's going to be able to pound it, but they're going to have him keep that Georgia secondary honest so Duggan can make some plays.
Yeah. Any update, Richard? Maybe you've heard about Washington, the other tight end. I say the other tight end, who's also a monster opposite of Bowers, who obviously is a playmaker.
The offensive lineman that plays tight end?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pretty much.
Washington?
He is expected to play.
Okay. Oh,
I'm
man.
not just saying that. I got my sources. I'm now in the media in the state of Georgia, so
Hey.
So I got my sources.
There you go.
We're I'm just having a great time down in Columbus, Georgia. Just getting to network with a lot of the local media there, and I tell you, it is just great. You talk about Georgia going to California to play this game. You remember when we were at Freed Hartman, I was the guy that was known as the guy from California,
Yeah.
born and raised in California, actually Northern California. And, they actually played a national championship game up in Northern California a while back in 2016. It was Alabama and Clemson. Hey, here's the thing about California. They really don't care about college football unless it's USC, and that's pretty much it. So all the fans that are going to SoFi Stadium, they're going to be Georgia, TCU. I don't know what the percentage is going to be as far as TCU and Georgia, but we will distinct because you're going to see purple and you're going to see red. Yeah. With Ohio State at the Peach Bowl at the Benz, it was hard to tell who was who because it seemed like they're both wearing red, yeah. But it seemed like it was 50-50 because Ohio State fans travel well. How well will Georgia fans travel all the way to California? And I know that Georgia fans are desperately trying to get a plane ticket now, or they're making that drive. They probably made that drive right after the game against Ohio State to get down to California and to see the Georgia Bulldogs once again in the national championship. I mean, I'm not going to say it yet. Georgia's got to win this game to say that they are starting the blueprint to what Nick Saban did when he took over Alabama in 2017 and he won those 3 national titles in 4 years. But I don't think Georgia's there yet. But Kirby Smart is starting to look like what Nick Saban was building in Alabama.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can deny that. And like you said, that's very wise. You want to get this win in, but just making the trip to the national championship is a big deal. I would like to extend my thanks to you and the Georgia Bulldogs for making sure that the Vols took a big L a couple of weeks ago, living up here in Tennessee.
Travis caring about after Alabama.
Living up here in Tennessee, it was nice to see them take a little bit of humility. And then, of course, the South Carolina Gamecocks doing us all the solid, really saving the world from one of the greatest evils that could possibly ever befall us and allowing the Vols to make the playoffs. Hopefully, that will never happen. But, how do you see, Will, what do you think as far as you've seen the Georgia secondary? you've probably seen a little bit of this receiver from TCU. Do they need a second receiver? Do they have a second receiver? I don't know. I know they've got the one. And is he going to be enough, or are we looking at another receiver exiting a Georgia National Championship game?
Yeah. Alabama had a great basketball game last night. I don't know if y'all saw that. For Brandon Miller, he's one of the greatest freshman basketball players I've ever seen. Just want to throw that in there.
Okay,
Seventh in the country. We're doing really well over here. Also, if Kirby wins, we get to claim that as a national championship too. So, I mean, life's good right now. I am curious to see how TCU does throwing the ball. But what's interesting to me, like, yes, Georgia's secondary kind of gave up quite a bit. But, like, do we compare CJ Stroud played an incredible game, and it's like TCU, I mean, like, do they have those athletes, versus, the depth there? The other thing is, and I would have been interested, Ohio State's best wide receiver opted out and didn't even play in the game, to prepare for the draft. In Jigba. So it's like, if they would have had him, would that have made a bigger difference? Did they win it? I mean, I think on paper you look at it and there's no comparison athlete to athlete with Georgia and TCU, and so I just –
How do you sit out? How do you sit out the playoffs?
No, I don't know.
I mean, I know you're about to go make money, but, I mean, there's a little pride that should be on the line there.
He was wide receiver number one, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was nursing an injury, and then he was just like,
done with it. I mean, I'm curious on that.
Hashtag no longer a blue blood. We're kicking them out. Ohio State, you no longer count, right?
Well, I mean, the thing that stands out to me, the only thing that, I mean, I'm glad that Duggan has gotten like all this experience of getting just beat up, because there's been a bunch of games he's gotten beat up in. Well, I think he's gonna take a beating, and I'm like y'all. I kind of hope they hang in the game, and I hope they play well against Georgia on some level. But I feel like he's gonna take a beating, but he's used to it. So
the most interesting thing to me about this game, I think, is like you look comparison to comparison, but TCU came from behind, I think, on 6 games to win the game. And it's like they would be down 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. And still, and I know they're not playing the caliber of Georgia every week, but like they've
been on the road.
They got some fight in them. So, I'm curious if like Georgia's if they get ahead, like they're going to have to put the foot on the throat and go for it.
Duggan's back's got to be hurting too, because he has carried the team the entire season.
Yeah, we saw the comment from friend of the show, Jeff Taberner, and TCU was down to West Virginia, and West Virginia is bad.
We love you, Jeff.
Like really bad. So they know how to come from behind.
You just offended the one watcher that we have, viewer.
All right, we'll see you later. See you next week, Jeff.
I think you got some. Go ahead, Blake. Sorry.
Let's not forget that Duggan was a Heisman finalist. He came in second.
Yeah.
So I think he should have won the thing if it has anything to do with character. Throwing out all of Caleb Williams' garbage. He's good, but
hey, didn't they lose in the playoffs?
Yeah, and they lost to TCU.
Lost to Tulane too.
Yeah,
the Green Wave.
So there's an argument for Duggan to be the best player in the country, and they're going to have to play a perfect game against Georgia.
I think you got 4 years where the Heisman Trophy was not an overrated, overhyped deal. The time the Alabama players won, it was probably accurate, but the rest of the time it's a hype award.
Toby Gerhardt was better than Mark Henry, and don't even
Mark Ingram. Who's Mark Henry?
Mark Ingram.
He's the wrestler. The world's strongest man. I watched a documentary on him. Mark Ingram. Sorry.
All right. Let's see. What else do you have to say, Richard, before we get to our official picks?
Well, just a thing about TCU. A lot of people keep forgetting, even though TCU's been in the Big 12, they used to be in the Mountain West. They used to be in the Conference USA. Remember, 2010, they had that great, incredible run, undefeated season with Andy Dalton. They beat Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. I think they got 1 vote when the final rankings came out. And then, of course, LaDainian Tomlinson. How can you forget about him? Probably the greatest player to ever come out of TCU. TCU is just got a lot of tradition and history, and they actually have 2 national titles. They just been in the 1930s. I'm impressed with the TCU Horned Frogs and their fan base. They're a smaller school, and it kind of reminds me of Gonzaga in college basketball. But Gonzaga has not won an NCAA championship just yet. They've gotten close. Can TCU break through and pull out the upset? And we'll find out Monday night.
Yeah, I kind of think of TCU in terms of Tim Tebow. Like, Tebow was not a practice player. Like, there's not a lot to him in practice from what I've heard. That, he's a monster. He's a huge individual, but he wasn't a great practice player. But when the lights came on, he was a different animal altogether, and he just found a way to win. And I want to give TCU a puncher's chance. I really do think that if they can muck it up, they just can't, like many of Georgia's opponents this year, like blow their own feet off. Like LSU has the field goal block where the guy picks it up and LSU's walking off the field and he houses it, stuff like that. Against Michigan, the 3 turnovers, I go back to that. They kept letting Michigan in the game, where I think if you do that for Georgia, it's going to be ugly, and it's going to be ugly fast. And so I think they got to play perfect. They've got it in them to win the game. I think we all agree that TCU has a puncher's chance at winning the football game. But you just look at all the 5 stars, you look at all those things, and they kind of have to have, and I'm going way back in the Wayback Machine here, 1992, Alabama, Miami. You got the 90s U with all the speed and all the talent, and they're just going to come out and try to outrun Alabama off the field. And Bama just played lights out defense and ran the ball. Obviously, you're going to have a different approach on offense because they're high powered as well with Georgia. And I do have a question. Does anybody know when Bowers is actually going to graduate? Because I would like to send him a gift.
Next year.
Is it next year?
He's going to be next year.
Oh,
I thought.
okay.
Isn't he a true sophomore?
He's not
True
going
sophomore.
to graduate. He's
probably going to go to the NFL.
He's just headed to the NFL.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he was made in a lab somewhere.
He was ready for the NFL out of high school. So.
All right. Well, Richard, we're going to start with you since you're our guest. I want you to first tell us where our listeners can find you and listen to your sports show. Is it every day, or how often is that? So just
it is a weekly, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. It's actually found on a local radio station in Newnan, Georgia, on WQEE 99.1 FM from 2 to 3. It's a very good time slot, and it's a local sports show that covers Columbus sports topics. And I cover Georgia stuff as well and national stuff. But it's called The Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, and you can download the podcast on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I've had over 535 episodes. I've had over 50 guests. Ben, Travis, you both have been guests on. Travis, you've been on multiple times. I had you on with Brad Page, and we previewed the national championship last year. It's always great when I get you guys on, and I just have a fun time doing it. I've been doing it for almost 3 years now, and I just love talking sports. And that's why I started the podcast, and it led to calling high school basketball and football games and being the voice of the Columbus Rapids and then the Columbus Lions, which is the indoor football team in Columbus, and, doing indoor soccer. I also call collegiate soccer for Columbus State. So I've got a pretty impressive resume, and I was just glad that I've had this opportunity. I've been truly blessed. I mean, Ben, Travis, you remember I did broadcasting at Freed Hardeman back in 1999 and took a very long break, joined the military, deployed a couple times. And it just goes to show it's never too late to chase your dreams. And at 40, I'm not going to age. Yeah, I just aged myself. All right. At 43, it's never, oh, man. I'm a little bit older than you guys because, man, I was a transfer student when I came to Freed Hardeman. So it's never too late to chase your dreams. And I'm really just truly living my dream right now.
Awesome deal. Well, give us a winner and give us a score if you don't mind. If you haven't done this on your show yet, if we need to wait closer to time so you can reveal. I don't want to give anything away. So you just tell me as much as you want to.
Unfortunately, I only have 3 shows this week because I have military training that I got to do. I actually leave tomorrow. So the actually best of shows are going to air on the radio station. So my podcast is only going to be 3 days this week. Monday's show, I'm going to have my co-host Corey Bank on, and we are going to make the prediction for the national championship. But here, you're going to get it from me right now. I believe that the Georgia Bulldogs are going to win, but it is going to be a high-scoring game. If you are a betting person, I am not. I would take the over because I think that TCU is going to be able to move the ball in Georgia's defense, but I just don't know how TCU's defense is going to stop Georgia. I know TCU's defense plays very well, but look at all the 4- and 5-star athletes that Georgia has compared to TCU. I think the depth of Georgia is going to carry over into the fourth quarter. And I'm going to say that the score is going to be 48-35.
48-35. 48-35. Richard Holdridge, thank you for sharing that with us. We'll go over to the man whose name is at the top of the page of all the Ben and Travis stuff.
Let Blake go first.
All right, Blake.
Have to build up for mine. No. So last year, I went against Georgia. And they made me eat some crow. Stetson Bennett had a great game.
The mailman delivered.
He delivered the mail, but we've seen both of these teams be in some big games and produce in big games, and I'm going with the best player, and I'm going with the Horned Frogs at Texas Christian University. So I'm going with the Christians to win this game. And I think
hot take.
I think that TCU is going to get 35 and Georgia's going to get 34.
Oh, wow. A 1-point game.
Wow. 1 point.
Nice. Now, I should have said this before Blake, because me and Ben and Will and Blake are all competing in our bowl pick'em. And I think 3 of us are tied at 8-4 is what I sent out. And I think Will is at 6-3. 6-3 or 7-3, something. Anyways, we're close, neck and neck. This will help in deciding that. We also add in, of course, March Madness and the NFL playoffs. I'll go into that. And the winner at the end of it gets a custom jersey. So I'm showing off that I won last year, 22.
I really like that jersey.
And so Blake's pick is with TCU. He's going with the upset. Jeff Tabener is going with the upset, the 45-38 score. And so both have picked high-scoring games, or at least high-scoring to me because I'm kind of old school. So we've got 1-1. All right. Well, we might as well. If we started off kind of backwards, we'll just keep going. Will, who you got?
Oh, man. So I think Alabama beats Kentucky Saturday. It's going to be a high-scoring game in Coleman, but I think we can get them. They may have the player of the year and the post player they've got, but I think Bama can handle it. So I'm going Bama on that one.
We're not picking Bama. We're picking Georgia TCU.
TCU. Oh, football. Well, I look at it this way, Travis. If Kirby wins, we get to claim it because we developed Kirby.
19, baby. 19.
19,000.
If TCU wins, I get to be happy because it's a Cinderella story, and who doesn't love a Cinderella story? So I think for every Alabama fan out there, it's a win-win. But I'm going to go with my good pal Blake here.
The Christians.
And I'm going to say that TCU gets it. I think Stetson had a good game. But I'm just waiting for the intramural Stetson to come out and just completely butcher the whole thing.
I've been waiting for 2 years and it ain't happened yet. But what's your score?
It's a 13-point favorite. I say I'm going to go 35-28.
35-28 TCU.
35-28. And that's solely based on Stetson has to have a terrible game for that to happen.
Yeah, he has to absolutely blow up, I think.
Yeah. Stetson Bennett's going to have a terrible game, but also he's going to be the most successful insurance salesman and car dealer in the state of Georgia that as anyone has ever seen. So let's just.
Oh,
he needs to go ahead and start his. He doesn't need to go try the NFL. No, let's get a start on his career, making money as an insurance salesman and a used car dealer.
Or
I'm going to say, at least Georgia will have, other than Justin Fields, will at least have a quarterback in the NFL at least for a year, unlike Auburn. So no more.
Jarrett Stidham started this past week.
is true.
Right, that is right. I forgot about that. Jeff Tabener meant to say Georgia is going to win. Jeff Tabener meant that Georgia is going to win. And then Paige Perry says Kirby is surely standing on the shoulders of the original giant, Coach Saban, and Kirby would not have a pot to pee in if it were not for Nick Saban giving him opportunity. So
dropping elbows.
You can't get this analysis anywhere else, folks.
Redneck City. All right, Ben Hayes, who you got, bro?
As bad as I want to go with these guys, I mean, I'm so tempted to go with them. I'm like you. I do not see Stetson Bennett having a meltdown. He's not had one yet. He himself is somewhat of a Cinderella story, even if I'm tired of hearing it. The guy came out of nowhere and just, he's been incredible. So I don't feel like TCU can beat Georgia if Georgia plays the way that they have been playing the last 2 years. I think that they win the game easily. So I'm going to say in the big lights, big show, Georgia's going to show up. You remember last year, Georgia struggled in the SEC championship with Alabama and then came back and just throttled Alabama in the championship.
Yeah, we lost our two best wide receivers.
I know that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Check your bingo card. There's your Alabama fan. Bingo.
That's true, though. That is true. There ain't no way. We torched them.
What's the score, Ben?
So my point being, they struggled last week. I think they'll come back and they'll be stronger. I think they'll win. I'm going to say that it's going to be 50-38.
50-38. Ben Hayes rolling with the Georgia Bulldogs. What up?
No, against Ohio State.
Because they had to. Take the over.
Lee Snow, I hope you're doing okay, man. Internet legend, TikTok legend. You got a prediction there, Lee? You can let us know in the comments. Robbie Daniel says Stetson Bennett will be selling used cars and Gecko commercial insurance while wearing his national championship rings. It's not a bad living.
You got an S.
Hey, what up, Robbie? Big Freed Harmon alumni too. Robbie Daniel.
So
did y'all see the interview with Stetson when they asked him about how much Todd Monken has meant to him? And he basically said, I had no idea what football even was until he came in and taught me what a defense actually does. I was like, kind of interesting.
Gonna take it, I feel.
Lee Snow rolls with Will and Blake's pick. TCU's gonna take it.
The Christians.
There you go.
I mean, I'll say I won't feel absolutely terrible if they take it. I mean, I think it's a cool story too, but I just think Georgia's got it.
And Ben, I'm going to jump on that train with you. I'm rolling with the Georgia Bulldogs. I think that I do think that Max Duggan probably out Stetson, and he has a performance, but it's in a losing circumstance. I think one of my biggest issues with the way we watch football now is if you lose, it negates everything else that you did. Alabama lost to Tennessee, so we actually got destroyed by Tennessee, even though they beat us by 3, and Bryce torched it and played out of his mind. So all that's worthless, and that's not true. I mean, if you play well, you should be honored in that. So I think Duggan does put on a show, but it is in a losing effort where he'll be remembered, hey, remember that great job he did, but I'm going to go with Georgia. And I'm going to think that it gets in the 40s as well. I think it's going to be even less than what Ben thinks. I think it'll be Georgia 50, TCU in the 28 points, 50-28. I think it gets ugly towards the end. And people might not even be watching at the end. Robbie Daniel says he thinks Georgia pulls it off with a field goal at the end of regulation, 45-40.
It's very specific, Robbie.
I like it.
Blake and I are just hoping that the spirit of Steven Garcia enters Duggan's body, and here we go.
It would be pretty phenomenal.
Jeff Tappan with a great take. Kirby Smart owes his success to Rich Rod. If Rich Rod wouldn't have turned down the Bama job, Saban never would have been hired at Bama, and Kirby wouldn't have learned from him. So
thank you, Rich Rod.
But Kirby,
West Virginia.
Kirby wasn't Kirby with Saban at Miami?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, he's been with him for forever.
Don't give Jeff anything else.
Who we should be thankful for is Rich Rod's wife, because she's the one who turned down coming to Tuscaloosa.
I think also Drew Brees' doctor.
Yes,
that's the real reason.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Drew Brees could have been a Miami Dolphin, and Blake's nightmares would have never come to fruition. It's really about Blake, though.
Kick six.
Yeah, it's really about Blake because Nick's at Auburn or at Alabama having success. Kirby then leaves and goes to Georgia, which is Auburn's other rival, and is having success. And so, sorry, Blake, not really, but
there's a cold front coming in, and I'm not talking about the weather. So,
gotcha. So Ben and I both picked Georgia. Will and Blake picked TCU. Richard, you picked Georgia. But these guys are the panel of dislike, and we have an official bowl pick'em of Ben and Travis. So we're going to have to bust out. We're going to have to flip the coin of doom and destruction. So I'm going to go get that really quick.
I was about to say we could just have like Siri pick it, but.
So Will, is Alabama is going to go to the Final Four this year in basketball?
Man, I don't know. I mean, so much of March Madness is, where you're placed, who you're in there with. The latest that they had Alabama and Gonzaga in the same bracket with UConn. And I was like, that is.
How do you put them all in the same bracket?
That's going to be insane. They didn't have, which now it's kind of flopped. They've got Bama and UConn as number ones projected. So they wouldn't be in the same, but there for a while, like all three of them were in the same side. And that's just, sometimes that's a gauntlet. Like what Auburn a couple of years ago had, like Kansas, North Carolina, and there was another blue blood that they had to go through. And Kentucky, I think they've got the team to do it for sure. We're young, and young can be great because they don't feel it and they just go play, or it can kill you. So we'll see. But they're fun to watch.
You can't get old in basketball. We're talking about football here.
So we got the coin. This is heads, Ben and Travis. That is the Georgia Bulldogs. That's who we're going with. Or we got tails, the Helping Healing Humor podcast, because TCU's quarterback will probably need some helping and healing and humor. So here we go. The coin flip. The official pick is the TCU.
Yes, let's go.
Dig 'em.
Let's go.
Now,
for a minute, Richard, at the beginning of the show, I thought he had the what is it? The correct? What's the frog that they play in the Hypnotoad? The Hypnotoad. I thought he had that going on behind him because there was flashlights going, all this stuff. I think a kid was running through there. I thought, man, he's about to pick the Hypnotoads, but maybe not.
All right, here we go. Wheelchair basketball. Take another national championship. We won a couple of those at Alabama. Very quickly, Richard, tell me one thing that you dislike about TCU and one thing that you dislike about Georgia, because this is the good old-fashioned dislike podcast.
The thing I dislike about TCU, their athletic director, for not giving Gary Patterson a chance. I like what Sonny Dykes is doing, but being from California, Sonny Dykes coached at Cal. How is that even possible? And then the one thing I don't like about Georgia, I really don't like their secondary. I don't like the fact that they're just continuing to just torch. These wide receivers are just torching Georgia's secondary. I know that Keely Ringo has been the hero because of the pick six last year in the national championship. But, I'm not a fan of Georgia secondary.
Gotcha. Thanks for bringing that up. Um,
Oh, no problem.
Like
There
that.
you go.
How about that?
all right, Ben. Give me one thing you dislike about TCU, one thing you dislike about Georgia, in whatever order you want to throw that out there.
What I dislike about them.
Yes.
So for TCU, I guess the thing I dislike about TCU is I don't know. I can't really think of a whole lot I dislike about TCU. Yeah, I mean that's okay. I do. He reminded me. I dislike the fact that they could lose a game and not drop out of number 3. That's what I dislike about them. It's not the fact that they didn't, deserve to be in there. It's just that they didn't drop at all. They really should have played Georgia first round. But that's what I dislike about it. What I dislike about Georgia is that they're wanting to, get the back-to-back. And I'm not excited about it. And Bowers. Those are the two things I dislike about it.
Will.
So as soon as you started this, I looked at Blake and I said it, and he goes, "That's the exact same thing I was going to say." Because a couple of years ago, my wife is a big Auburn fan. So I got tickets to the SEC Championship, had 2 extra. So Blake came with us when Auburn and Georgia were playing. And that's when I found my true dislike of Georgia, was having grown men bark at me while I was walking down the concourse. It's like we're going up an escalator and grown men are getting in our face barking at us. So that would be the dislike that I have for Georgia. And then Blake, since it was similar, I'm going to go with his dislike for TCU.
He's going to steal all of yours.
Well, there's not much. I'm having trouble thinking of a dislike of TCU. I mean, it's a great Christian university, and I don't think we need to be throwing much dislike toward a fine establishment. I mean, God bless Texas. I mean, we know that. So I'm at a loss for a dislike of TCU here.
This.
This
Yep,
is
there's the dislike.
For those of you that are on the podcast listening, it is the Hypnotoad of Doom.
if you've never seen Hypnotoad, that's what you need to.
There you go. Blake, what's your dislike of Georgia? Are there too many to list, or did you go with barking?
Yeah, it's being our bitter rival, the barking, just the grown men with face paint and chains, spiky chains. I'm not a fan of spiky chains and all that. So I see Richard breathing hard. He's probably tired of hearing me talk. So, that's part of the show here. So,
well, my dislike of TCU is they play in the Big 12, which is tackling optional. As you know, Alabama is actually the 2022 Big 12 champions because we housed the team that beat TCU. So that's probably going to be my dislike of TCU. And my dislike of the Georgia Bulldogs is their schedule. Sign us up. Can we get one of those? Because I would like to play our biggest rival on a neutral field because we used to do that. Thanks, Iron Bowl. And I would love to – and next year our out of conference schedule is pretty much a joke other than Texas. So maybe we'll get that schedule. But I appreciate it. But
I will say I'm excited for Brandon and Matthew Ballantyne. Just throwing it back a long way back where they were in the youth group, in my youth group a long, long time ago. They are huge TCU fans from my remembering. So I think that they're probably pretty pumped and excited about the possibility of TCU grabbing a national title. So congrats to Matthew and Brandon.
Well, this is the Good Old Fashioned Dislike Podcast, and it is brought to you by SEC Bias, because here it is. We just gave it to you for the last 44 minutes. Richard, I'm going to give you the last word, and then I'll sign us out, man. Let us know. Tell us a little something.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I mean, I can't believe it's been a year. I'm just really honored to be on your podcast and just talking about the national championship. And I'm excited. I cannot wait to watch Monday night. And it's just going to be a great national championship. And it's really going to be a great month of football. I just love just watching college football and the NFL. It's just being from California and also living in Georgia. I've gotten to see both sides of the passionate fan bases. And let me tell you something. When you're playing, these two college football teams are playing in California. They don't get passionate about college football in California. So it's going to be a culture shock, but hopefully a lot of Georgia fans and hopefully not a whole lot of TCU fans can make it out to California and pack SoFi Stadium. And all I got to say is go Dogs.
All right, man. Well, have you got two Super Bowl competitors? I'll put you on the spot. Who you think's going to Super Bowl?
Oh, that's going to be Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers taking on Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, a rematch of the Super Bowl 3 years ago, back in 2020. That Super Bowl where the 49ers had a big lead, and then Patrick Mahomes came back and they won the Super Bowl for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, there you have it. I'm sure Richard will be covering it all as we lead up to Super Bowl. Yeah. So be sure to check out his show, The Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. And guys, I appreciate your time, and we will see you soon. Hope you enjoy the national championship. It should be a good game, at least for a little while.